Mark Messier. Hey, Moose, how are you, pal? Thanks for doing this.
Doing great, Kipper. That was your Stanley Cup.
Thank you. Yes, it was. Riding your coattails, baby. So, Mess, I need some help here. I need you to talk our producer, Sammy, and everybody in Leaf Nation off the ledge after game one.
Well, I don't know if we needed a reminder that winning a Stanley Cup is kind of hard, but we got a dose of reality of that last night. There's no smooth road or straight line to a Stanley Cup, and you're going to have to overcome a lot of obstacles in order to win one.
So, in your experience, I mean, playing on all those champions, and then the years that you didn't experience a really bad loss, what would be going through the minds of the Leafs now? How would you have handled that loss in your day?
Well, it's really interesting. Normally, any team's journey to a Stanley Cup is going to be met with some adversity along the way. The Leafs find themselves getting that adversity very early in the series, actually in Game 1, which I don't think anybody expected. But look, these are the times that can either galvanize a team together, or they can tear a team apart, and it's just really how they're going to kind of look at it or come together and figure out a way forward. They didn't play very good last night. There's no question about it. That can they play better? I think obviously, but even if they play better, it's always going to be a tough matchup against Tampa, because Tampa's a really good team, and they got superstars on their team, and they got a great goaltender, and they got a lot of experience. So even if the Leafs play great, it's not going to guarantee a win. But I think the players to themselves have been reminded that in order to beat the Tampa, they're going to have to play much better than they did last night. They're going to have to play much more disciplined. And, Tampa's going to score some goals. And so, they got to figure out a way to get their own offense going as well.
What are your thoughts on the word nervousness and, dealing with pressure for NHL guys who play in front of 20,000 people all the time and have been in big games their whole lives, most of them? Can it still have an effect on guys at the highest level in these sort of moments? And how does it affect players if you do think it has some?
Well, I think it can, and I think in the past, teams have shown to have that kind of nervousness, especially early in the games, but that kind of goes away after the first few shifts of the first part of the game, in my experience anyways. I don't think we can chalk that up to last night, in my opinion. I think, if anything, I don't know. It's hard to talk about the Leafs without being inside the dressing room. But, Tampa was just waltzing their way through the end of the season and not really making any noise of any kind, other than them being past Stanley Cup champions. But they took the time to get themselves ramped up and to get healthy, and were relying on their experience coming into the playoffs, and they came out with a great Game 1. But, nothing's ever won in the first game, whether you get crushed or you win and lose in overtime. The Leafs got to be looking at this as it's going to be a long season, and I still think it's going to be.
We're talking to Hockey Hall of Famer and ESPN hockey analyst Mark Messier. Samsonov comes in, yes, number one goalie, and probably feeling a little bit of the pressure, yet not the start that he wanted. Is there any way that you can draw any comparison to, say, your 1990 Stanley Cup, in which you had Bill Ranford, and if I'm not mistaken, you guys lost maybe 7-4 in that game, and I think you were down in that series as well, and Ranford surviving?
Yeah, well, Billy actually came in, and he had pretty big shoes to fill with the goaltending that we had in the past with Mogan Fuhr. But he came in and played unbelievable that year, to be honest with you. And so going into the playoffs, we were very comfortable, as I'm sure Leafs were coming into the playoffs with Samsonov. He's had a good year. So I think that confidence haven't wavered. I think this was a collective effort, so I wouldn't really be pointing the finger at any one particular player. I think overall it was just a kind of a bad night that got worse for the Leafs, and they got to park that pretty quickly now and get ready for themselves tomorrow.
And so what does that look like, that sort of trying to regroup? I was just thinking about the Leafs. Like, they give up one with 1 second left to go down 6-2. I can't imagine sitting in that dressing room for the third period where really hopes of a comeback against a great team like Tampa are pretty much non-existent. You know, who does that fall on? Is it all Sheldon Keefe? Is it the leadership group? How do they get themselves back to the level of confidence and, frankly, swagger that they need to be a great team in this league?
The score at times is irrelevant to the series outcome. You can't play a game as individual entities and think just because you're down 6-2 that there's nothing to be gained from the rest of that particular game. I mean, every shift, every kind of contest or contested puck out there is important for the future of the series, and and I think if you look at it as individual battles and that are going to be waged to win the war, there was a lot to play for, even though they were down 6-2 last night, in my opinion. But it's also a reminder that teams in the playoffs have to be able to win in different ways. You can't be one-dimensional. What you find out in the playoffs is that whatever you do well, the other team understands that and is well-scouted, and they're going to take that away from you. So when they do start taking away your strengths, I mean, how are you going to respond to that? And what are the things that you're going to do in order to change that or reverse that kind of strategy that's going against you? And also being able to win in different dimensions, whether it's through physicality or whether it's through your offense or your power play or penalty killing or, the ground and pound. So if you're a one-dimensional team and coming up into the playoffs against a really good team, you better be able to adapt very quickly and change courses and figure out a way that you're going to win this series one way or another.